It's a bit of a trek.
Perth is a bit of a trek, folks. Stirling and Rose, we love you guys, but it's a little bit of a trek. But that's okay. We'll make it. I mean, we're going to be there for this 28th thing, and hopefully we'll see SJ and some others there. I'll send out the invites and stuff because we'll figure all that out. But anyway, let's get started. We'll add this to the bloopers and stuff. So camera there, awesome backdrop here, and 3, 2, 1. Hi everyone, it's Mark here from the Oz DeFi Association. This is for the Rants and Raves series, which is a new part of the podcast, the all-new revamped Oz DeFi podcast in conjunction with the Data Science and AI Association of Australia. And given that it's Web3 and AI, what better a guest to have than someone, James, a co-founder from a group that is all about both Web3 and AI, covering emerging tech from the law firm Stirling Rose. James Myint, thank you so much for joining us.
Great, thanks. Mark, glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here, man. We've been speaking about this for a while, about getting you on the podcast and the show, and it's been just really busy, and we've been busy getting equipment set up. Then it was blockchain week, then we've had all these other things, but now we're finally here, and you've hurt yourself. Tell us, first of all, what the heck have you done? What's happened to your leg?
Well, I've hurt myself as you get older, and I always have this conversation. I'm a lot older than I look like, but I hurt myself walking.
There you go. It happens, folks. This is really strenuous walking, right?
Oh, I did one lap of Centennial Park, and I went home to my wife, and I said, I think I've hurt myself.
Was that with the dogs? Did you have the dogs with you?
No, it was just me, just walking.
Oh, no.
It's been a fairly busy time, so I've been sitting literally in front of my computer for about 14 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And I think so the first time I decided to go for a walk, that was not to get a coffee. Just my whole leg blew up. So I think I'll be in this little moon boot for a while.
I think we've got you in the right kind of mood to be, what's grinding my gears, because that's what this show is about. And it doesn't just have to be all negative kind of stuff. It's just we're getting real with this. This is all about being pragmatic and stuff. But let's get to something that's been really interesting, given that you're a lawyer and, the whole world's kind of been trying to figure all this out. But Ripple, the court case, the background to that, the Howey test and all this kind of stuff. I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, even if you just follow the crypto markets, we know there's been a huge surge. I think something like 60% on Ripple, and that's obviously predicated off the decision of Ripple last week. I think probably some things which Ripple is and what it isn't, like what the judgment represents.
Sure.
It's a summary judgment, so it's still a judgment of a district court in the United States.
Okay.
So it's not a lay down misere, it's not like a full bench Supreme Court decision or the equivalent of a unanimous High Court decision in Australia, but it is a decision. And there's been a lot of chatter. I think first caveat is I'm not a US lawyer. So I know that sounds like a very weak start.
Not legal advice here, folks. Not legal advice.
But it's relevant because I think this is going to go to a broader theme, which is I think people probably should have watch out for people who make definitive statements about judgments in other jurisdictions, which they may not necessarily have expertise in. So the so-called back of the car seat advisor.
Yep.
But the Ripple decision, I think, is actually a really interesting one on a number of bases. I'm not sure whether it would be worthwhile to everyone if I just go through a quick rundown.
Please do, yeah.
Sure. Okay. So there's a district court decision. There's a high chance it's going to be appealed.
Yep.
So this is not
by
the
Gary.
End. Yep, personally by Gary. But look, there's a high chance it's going to be appealed. There's a number of interesting things that come out of it. Probably a few things which raise a few questions. And I think ultimately behind the whole wrapper is why is this actually relevant to Australia?
Yeah.
So I think for the first part is there's a number of judgments. They found that institutional sales of the Ripple token, that's a security. Okay. So that's not really much of an
that was hidden in there. We had the headline, but then it's there was something that they were in breach of in the $700 million mark for institutional sales. Yeah.
Exactly. You've read the judgment.
A little bit.
The second part, which got everyone excited about, was that programmatic sales between buyers and sellers separately to Ripple are not securities.
Okay.
And that's sort of like being seen like the gotcha moment in the crypto industry, because for the first time, and like the SEC, just to be clear, they have a very strong track record. But for this decision, they've sort of been pretty much had a unanimous record
Yeah.
in the hundreds of decisions in relation to whether tokens are securities. So that statement is seen as mind-blowing. And then there's also the concept of other sales, so like, issuance of Ripple tokens to employees.
Okay.
And that was seen as not securities. And then the judge declined because it was not put before her as to whether secondary sales of Ripple were securities. So it's that second part which I think everyone's getting very excited, that the prospect of a crypto token not being a security. All right.
I see everyone's eyes lighting up right there.
They should, but I think we have to take into account that there's a good chance the decision will be appealed.
Of course.
The other thing, which is like this sort of goes to this whole comment about regulatory uncertainty, lack of regulatory clarity. I think it should be really clear. There is regulatory clarity because it's very clear the Howey test is going to apply. And Ripple came up with an argument that there's a new different type of test, an essential ingredients test, but the court basically found no, the existing law applies. So it's in a way it's a win, but in a way it's not a win. And I think so. I think that the thing is the existing law is still applying. I think the thing that actually really is a question mark for me though is that if you follow the logic of the judge and the court, and very, very smart judge, they're saying that if you have a programmatic sale or you have an issuance of a token to employees, for that reason that means that asset is not a security. But it results in a weird conundrum, because if you think about it, let's take it back just in normal parlance.
Sure.
If you have some shares or bonds in an Australian company,
Yep.
and we know that those say are securities or financial products in Australian language, would they actually change their characteristic as being a financial product just because they're being issued to employees? Does a share in BHP stop being a share and being treated as a whatever its regulatory characteristic is because it's being issued to its employees? So that's one of the questions that's sort of coming around from the philosophical one.
That is interesting.
The other point, which is that perversely, the whole point of the Howey test, and you have to remember the whole point of all this regulation is to protect retail investors. The consequence of the decision, if you follow it with a natural conclusion, is that retail investors via programmatic sales, employees who are also retail investors, maybe they're not, but basically mums and dads, ordinary people, are not subject to the protections under the regulation. But those who are actually receiving the token via institutional sales, so hedge funds, investment banks, they are protected.
The corollary is fantastic.
So it's really like the regulation means that it's protecting the sophisticated investor, but it won't be protecting the retail investor. That's why I think it's actually really interesting.
People rejoicing, and yet we have these corollary and other effects that you may not have thought of because you just wanted to say that, oh, this isn't regulated. And people just want that, but there's so much more to it beyond that, isn't it?
I think that's right. And I think the other thing is what I started off with is, well, what does it mean for Australia? And ultimately, the Howey test is in America, but we actually have a pretty rigorous regime in the Corporations Act. And everyone's rejoicing, and I've seen a few commentators already leaping into the fray, but I don't know, maybe even if this decision doesn't get appealed, even if the odd consequences we've just discussed isn't true, there's actually sort of three limbs you have to look at under to whether you're a financial product in Australia. Is it a financial investment? Is it managing financial risk? Or is it a means to make non-cash payments? And you think that through, that last one in particular, maybe you win on the first one, I'm not sure, but then you still run into, is Ripple, especially given what it's trying to say as a Bitcoin killer or an ETH killer, is it a non-cash payment facility? That's still one of the limbs under Australian law. And I think that's the thing. There's a lot of there's a propensity for people to like the tweets and go Australian American law is the same as Australian,
Oh my
but
God, yeah.
I'm not sure anyone's actually read the Corporations Act.
Yeah, they think that they might not get caught because it's not like a security for whatever reason they think that, but then you are inevitably captured by something like you are part of a managed investment scheme. Like the
Correct.
law is different here versus over there, so people need to be aware.
I think that's right. And I'm not anti or pro in one particular way. I think the answer is that it just requires nuance, and you have to just do the work. I think the best argument probably is one that this is the first time there's actually been sort of big engagement on the point, and I think that's actually a useful thing because it actually looks at the underlying asset and what it really is.
Yep.
The second thing is that this is the meta point, and it's a little bit eating into my prior point, but these tokens can be dynamic and they can change a lot.
Okay.
And I think there is an argument in relation to the dynamism of some of the tokens over time that they may actually change their characteristics, which means we actually have to do the work as they evolve and change. But we also, well, one, we just have to do the work, but we also just have to be aware, as I say, of the nuance and actually working through the test, as painful as it is, through the token at a particular point in time.
Well, we've got AI now, so maybe it can help us do the tests, so we'll see. Okay. All right, and the next question in this Rants and Raves podcast is all about what we're calling consulting conundrums. So recognizing and finding that when you are getting that bad advice, sometimes it's too late for companies. So, we both consult in our various fields, technology and the law, both in emerging tech. But do you have some advice for people when they're looking at consultants that are out there, just like how do you, whether it's in your space or just in general, what kind of advice do you have for folks when they're trying to figure out if the person that's opposite them that's helping them out is legit?
I actually have mulled this one for a long time.
Okay.
And I think the thing is, like, we humans just generally are bad at judging other people. Especially, like, we're just a bundle of biases. I'm a bundle of biases. We see a person wearing a suit and they speak well, they must be a good lawyer, or they must be a good consultant. We see a person that's not like us, we don't like them. Like, it's just these heuristic biases. I think the best tip is, and it's part of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you start liking a person, they start saying things, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I would probably say, and it's such a bizarre consequence of the whole zero trust concept underpinning the DeFi community, but I actually think the answer is, and it is actually asking good questions to your advisors.
Okay.
And actually interrogating them as you would anyone.
Yep.
There's a concept of the naysayer or the devil's advocate, where you actually have to ask a person a question and see what they actually say.
Yeah.
And I actually think a lot of the times what may have been happening in the industry is people meet someone, it all sounds great because that person sounds like an expert in the field, but there's no means of actually assessing the credibility.
Do you mean because the industry's so early, or?
I think it's a bit because the industry is early,
Yeah.
but I also think it's because there's no way of telling. Like, how do you tell if a person is an expert if you yourself are not an expert?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And I think, but one thing is, like, the law and just general advice is quite common sense, and so in a way you almost need to, if you are going to get the talk to your advisor, I think you actually need to take the view, almost stepping away. And also, founders want things to happen. They're optimistic.
Yep.
You almost have to take the pessimistic hat and take the stance of, if I am a regulator, what would I ask? And then asking your advisor, if this actually happened, where does it actually fall apart? And secondly, what does it actually mean for me as a founder? Does it mean, for instance, am I personally exposed to civil penalties? Am I exposed to criminal penalties?
What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly. And then checking what did they actually say? And this is one of the things lawyers and I think probably consultants are often criticized for, but it's the old adage, it depends. And I actually think, in a way, the ones who actually say, oh, it depends, and I need more facts, not really compelling when you're talking to someone who says, oh, no, I will fix all your problems. But you'll probably think the person says, it depends, I need a bit more information, because unsurprisingly, the law as applied to the craziness of facts and the real world, it depends.
It's difficult, isn't it? Like, people want certainty and stuff, and yet when the space is moving, you're never going to get certainty. Like, even if it's a well trodden kind of path, there still is never certainty. It's all based. It's unfortunately it boils down to math and probability. It's, you know, which is the one that's going to give you the lowest likelihood of risk, but if you don't take risk, you've got a lower chance of success. You know what I mean? Like, it's that measure of what people need to do. But like, what are some things that you would look at? What are some factors that you might find like, okay, we're going to use logic here, and whether it's consulting for tech or for legal, what are some things that you would look at if you were going to get some help, if you were a founder and stuff like that?
I would ask for like prior transaction history.
Okay, cool.
I would actually take probably a detailed look at the in addition to the transaction history, just taking a look at the experience. And it's like with anything in life, if you're not really sure about the person, getting one of your friends who might be in the industry to say, okay, what are the bona fides of that? And then basically, like, the world we really get into is risk in an information asymmetric world, but it's doing your due diligence. And it might seem like a lot, but like, especially in a regulatory environment where if you get it wrong, it is criminal penalties. And I'm not sure whether people actually really point out how severe it can be.
Yeah.
If you're we call it in law the calculus, but if you know something has drastic consequences for you, then you probably need to do a little bit more due diligence and make sure you've got the wrong advisor. If you know something's niggling you in your leg, or I should say inside your stomach, you might get a second opinion.
Second opinions help.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
There you go, folks. And what a great first episode of the Rants and Raves podcast. You heard some great opinions here from James. There's going to be plenty more to come. But if people are interested in Stirling and Rose and connecting with you, where do they find you?
Well, we're national, so you can join us at one of our spots around the country. But we're a virtual firm, so it's as well. So www.stirlingandrose.com is a good place, or you can just hit me up on my LinkedIn, or just drop me an email.
There you go, folks. Check it out in the show notes. James, thank you so much. I know we finished our drinks, but cheers anyway. And we'll see you next time.